Flying into Elk River's private airport is a safe and enjoyable mountain flying experience. A careful pilot who takes the time to view this video and view the Elk River Airport website should have little difficulty successfully landing and taking off at Elk River. The airport is daylight only. Observe a pattern altitude of 5,000 feet. Stay clear of clouds. Ensure good VFR conditions. And use runway 12 for landings and 30 for departures. The airport's elevation is about 3,500 feet. Its asphalt runway is 75 feet wide and 4,500 feet long, with private hangars at both ends. It can easily and safely accommodate single and twin-engine airplanes and many small private jets. The minimum IFR vectoring altitude in the immediate area is 8,500 feet. The normal procedure is to cancel IFR and transition to VFR before beginning your descent to pattern altitude. We request that you call in position and altitude reports 10 miles out, 5 miles out, and on each segment of the pattern, including when taxiing. Typically, the Elk River security personnel will respond with a report of the wind conditions and a notification of any traffic in the area. Welcome to Elk River. Let's go flying. Runway 12 is the preferred landing runway at Elk River. Pilots often land on 12 even with a 10 to 15 knot tailwind component due to the steep terrain at the approach end of runway 30. To set up for landing on runway 12, enter into a crosswind leg prior to turning to the left-hand downwind for 12. We can see the town of Banner Elk at our 1 o'clock. The Lees-McRae College athletic fields and tennis courts appear at 12 o'clock as we initiate the turn to downwind. The Elk River Golf Course is off our left wing, and Beach Mountain off the right, above the airplane at a height of 5,600 feet. As we fly downwind, we have an excellent view of the runway and the Elk River community. As we come abeam of the numbers of 12, a hill obstructs our view of the runway. We will continue to fly this heading on the downwind leg for approximately 3 miles. This extended downwind helps, particularly in a high-performance airplane, to give us plenty of time to get properly configured for a stabilized approach. As we continue on the downwind leg, we will remain at pattern altitude. We now can see 2 small ponds just to the left of the nose of the airplane. These 2 ponds are a useful visual cue for our turn to base. As we begin our turn just inside these ponds, we will begin a gradual descent to 4,500 feet, 1,000 feet above the field elevation. In a complex airplane, this is a good point to lower the gear, enter approach flaps, and begin to slow to your final approach speed. As we turn from base to final, we are established at 4,500 feet. The approach end of the runway is barely in view. Straight ahead, you will see a 2-lane road on the valley floor that leads towards the runway environment, located in the red circle and about 2 miles away. Straight ahead and off to the right of the nose of the airplane, you will see a small church. This church is approximately 1 mile from the approach end of the runway. We will fly directly over the church as we descend to 4,000 feet. This gradual descent profile helps us maintain a stabilized approach. The location of the runway in the valley between the ridges presents a visual that can cause pilots to remain too high for too long, resulting in a very steep approach on short final, an increase in airspeed, and a destabilized approach. We'll go through our landing checklist and, depending on the type of plane we are flying, make sure our gear is down and locked. Go to full flaps and verify that we are at the proper approach speed. As we said earlier, often the approach to runway 12 may involve a tailwind component, making speed control even more important. As the runway environment comes into view, keep in mind that we are offset from the runway's center line by about 20 degrees as we fly down the valley. Here, we are on about a 1/2 mile final, and the entire runway comes into view. At this point, we're lined up right down the center line. Distance markers are located on both sides of the runway, marking 1,000-foot intervals. Wind socks are at both ends. We'll make our touchdown well before the second marker. The runway has a gradual uphill slope, and a touchdown before the second marker leaves 2,600 feet of runway remaining, which should be a sufficient distance to allow most planes to come to a normal stop. Runway 30 is the preferred departure runway. When taxiing to runway 30, make an announcement when leaving the ramp area that you are taxiing to runway 30 for departure. The Elk River security personnel will typically respond with a report on wind speed and direction and any traffic in the area. The first third of runway 30 is a downhill takeoff, followed by a gradual uphill slope. Climb out on runway heading at best angle of climb. As soon as practical, a 20-degree right turn is recommended for terrain avoidance. Continue climbing at best angle of climb until you are at or above pattern altitude prior to turning on course. Depending on wind conditions, many pilots choose to execute short field takeoff procedures. Because of the terrain, there are limited options in the event of an emergency, so obtaining best altitude in the shortest distance is desirable. Here, we are on downwind for landing on runway 30. As in the case of landing on runway 12, we are at a pattern altitude of 5,000 feet. This is particularly important when landing on 30. Below us, you can see the Elk River Golf Course and a number of Elk River residences. This is a noise-sensitive area, so we will carefully maintain our pattern altitude until we begin the turn to our base leg. Most often, we will elect to land on runway 30 when the tailwind component of landing on runway 12 exceeds 10 to 15 knots. Otherwise, runway 12 remains the preferred runway for landing. As we continue our downwind leg and come abeam the numbers of 30, we can see a ridgeline directly ahead of us. We will be flying over this ridgeline prior to turning to base. Just before clearing the ridgeline, we will fly directly over Wildcat Lake. As we come over the ridgeline, we can see a large Lowe's store just to our left. This is our visual cue for the beginning of our turn to base. As we start our turn to base, we will also initiate a descent from our pattern altitude of 5,000 feet to 4,500 feet. Once again, 1,000 feet above the field. We are now beginning our turn to final. We can see the Lees-McRae running track and tennis courts under the nose, and the runway just to our left. We are also beginning our descent to 4,000 feet. As we line up with the runway, we can see that there is steep terrain between us and the approach end. This terrain will necessitate a steeper than normal approach. At this point, we go through our landing checklist, making sure the gear is down and locked. Full flaps are extended, and very importantly, we are on our final approach speed. As we clear the hill at the approach end of the runway and begin our steep approach, we are careful to make sure that we continue to control our airspeed. Even though the runway has a downhill slope, with proper airspeed control, we are able to land within the first 1,000 feet of the runway and bring the airplane to a safe and normal stop. We hope you have enjoyed this video experience of flying into and out of Elk River. We look forward to welcoming you on your next fly-in visit to our community. Please contact us if you have any additional questions or need more information. Here is our phone number and our email address.